Scrappers, recyclers, and investors, welcome to Shark Scrapper Live, where every Sunday we're taking a look at the precious metals market, industrial metals market. We have a safety tip for the week, and then we have the free for all of whatever else is going on. It is great to be here. I look forward to these live streams so much every week. We've got some really fun stuff to talk about this week for sure. Let's see. David Filley was first in the house. David, welcome. Roger at CU Scrapping came in a little while later. It's great to have you all here. We will see who else shows up as the stream progresses. There's Richard joining us. Hey, Richard, great to have you here. I'm going to dive right in because we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. So I want to get right into our discussion of precious metals, and we're talking silver. Silver is at 39.14, but what's really interesting to me is what's happened. So here we are, we're on the APMEX page. Now, remember, I am not sponsored by APMEX. I don't get any money from APMEX. They're just one of the organizations that I have used to buy and trade, sell my precious metal, my physical gold and silver. I do recommend that everybody have some physical gold and silver in their portfolio. I do not recommend the paper certificates. They're not worth the paper they're printed on. But physical gold and silver that you have in your hand is an investment that you can do things with. And we're going to talk more about that a little bit later on in the live stream. But right now, let's go ahead and take a look at silver. So here we are, we're on the 1 week chart. And look what happened here. Early in the week, we were kind of plateauing along. Then we dropped to this kind of a plateau, kind of falling off. We jumped back up again, kind of leveled out, jumped back up again, had kind of slid for a little bit. But at the end of the week, we had this real nice climb here. And that was nice to see, very nice to see indeed. If we look at the 1 month, it kind of gets washed out a little bit. We can see that, we can see this consistent kind of pattern of rises and falls going on here with some occasional plateaus. That kind of stuff goes on. I'm going to get right over here to the 1 year. And what we see for the 1 year is that silver is up 37.3%. So if we take an arrow from the beginning to the end of the year, we get a nice rise. If we kind of take an arrow and put it through the center of everything, we see that you can see here, we've had some pretty good movement, generally up overall for silver, which is really nice. Now, of course, if you're a day trader in the game, you take advantage of these kind of dips and swings here, but that's not me. I'm a buy and hold investor, whether it's my physical material or my stock. So we like to see this nice long-term trend. At this point, now we're going to pop on over here to trading economics, because trading economics gives us a little more clarity and a little more discussion and a little more that we can do with the charts. So here we are, we're still at 1 year. We're going to bring up the candlesticks. Each candlestick represents 1 day of trading. And if we zoom in here to this end pattern here, we can see some pretty good climbs, and then the falls and some more pretty good climbs, and then these falls and some more climbs, and we look like we're climbing again. So what's going on here? Why is that going on? Well, we look up here, we see silver soared to $39 an ounce, approaching a 14-year high of $39.50, touched back in the end of July. And it's all because of the possibility of rate cuts by the Fed. So the markets are also thinking about the industrial uses of silver, which is one of those things that makes silver really interesting, because it is both an industrial metal, more so than gold, and a precious metal for investors. The Fed sees a shift in the balance of risks of a weaker labor market, against inflation. And so they're talking about perhaps in September a 25 basis point rate cut. Now, you frequently hear this talk about a rate cut, a basis points. What are basis points? So basis points is just the financial jargon for 1/100th of a percent, or 0.01%. So when you hear them say 25 basis point rate cut, what they're talking about is cutting the Fed rate by 0.25%, 0.25%. And of course, if the Fed cuts their rate, if the Fed cuts the rate, that means it's cheaper for banks to get money, which means the banks can then provide those discounts. And, we all might see lower interest rates on our loans or get offered lower interest rates. So there's some goodness in there. Of course, the Fed has this dual, in the United States, the Fed has this dual mandate of keeping the economic numbers in balance and keeping jobs in balance. So they have to be very careful that they don't do something that pushes interest rates or jobs too far out of whack one way or the other. And that can get complicated, as we're seeing. So the other thing is on the industrial front, we're seeing that solar cell exports from China grew over 70% in the first half of the year, supported by stronger photovoltaic, solar cell demand in India. And a lot of that has to do with some policy changes that might make it more difficult to get panels into the grid. If you're in India, that is going to be more important to you. As far as we're concerned, as scrappers, that really means is that China was shipping a lot of solar cells. That means that they were burning through a lot of silver, so there was a lot of demand on the silver. And now that might ease up a little bit, which could have an impact on the prices. When we think about the silver price from the perspective of scrappers and recyclers, it's we don't get a lot of silver scrap unless you're really out there looking for silver scrap. Say the contacts that you have in some of the switches and solenoids, and you might be one of these people that goes to the thrift stores looking for sterling silver that's mixed in with the everyday silver, or you might go to estate sales looking for it. So silver is one of those things that, from a scrap and recycling perspective, it's not huge on our agenda. But it is still there. There are still silver-bearing materials. And in the computer boards and electronics that we have, there's also some silver in there as well. Some of the things that people call M&Ms on the boards, the MLCCs, there's silver there, and that can have an impact on the prices. Not as much as gold, but it's still there. All right, well, let's get over and see what folks have had to say since we've been in here talking about silver, and who all else has joined us. Let's see. E-Waste Mike is in the house. Hey, Mike, great to have you here. Andy's in the house. Andy, welcome. Great to have you here. Patrick Williams has joined us. Folks just saying hey there. Mike's Meltdown is in the house. Great to have you, Mike. D Scrapper is here. Great to have you with us. D Electronic Scrapper's with us. Electronic Scrapper goes after the silver. That's for sure. Let's see. Have I missed anybody joining us? I do not think so. Richard Holbert is saying that he has some silver saved up. He's in no rush to sell, and he doesn't buy it. Yeah, I'm with you, man. So here is, when I was buying, adding to, some people call it their stack. I like to buy. I especially like these Sunshine Mints, the 5, 10 ounce bars or the 1 ounce rounds. And the reason I like them is because on the back they've got this weird logo thing here, and then they have a little card reader. If you put it over the card reader, you can see that that is a legit Sunshine Mint bar as opposed to a counterfeit. So that's one of the reasons that I like them. It's also, I mean, it's reasonably good mint. But there's some good stuff out there that, plenty of good mints that you want to buy from. There's folks that like to buy the pandas or the kookaburras or those coins. They're paying a premium for those coins and they're hoping they're going to get the premium back. I don't do that. I just buy bullion type uh, things like rounds and bars from the various mints. I do want to buy it from a recognized mint. That way, when it comes time for me to sell it, whether I'm selling it to a local coin dealer or pawn shop or back to APMEX or JM Bullion or one of those folks, it's an easier sell. And the premium that you pay for a bullion type bar or round is much less than you're going to pay for something like a kookaburra or a panda. So just keep that one in mind. Let's see, what do we got going on here? Folks are asking Mike how he's doing. And Mike is saying that he's been in bed since yesterday, not feeling well. Might be getting a cold. Well, hang in there, Mike. Stay hydrated, man. Colds suck, man. They just really take it out of you. And let's see. Scrapping Irish has joined us. No worries, man. You're never late when you make it. Oh, man. Richard's saying that he gets his silver from e-waste. The cost of recovering silver from flatware and utensils is a very low profit. Yeah, the acids and stuff that you have to use to get the silver out of those can really. Mylars are the same way. A lot of folks who have said that it's not worth the cost to get the silver off of the silver Mylars from the keyboards. So Homer's Reluctant Odyssey has joined us. Just bought my son some 1 ounce rounds from Scottsdale Mint. Oh, okay, very cool. And you got it for his birthday. That's cool. That's a great way to help your kids or others to get their silver started. Is to get them a couple ounces as a birthday present or a Christmas present or whatever holiday you're celebrating with them. You make the investment for them; it's free. My wife and I used to give the young children in our family silver dollars as just a way to when they were young to get them started. So that was a lot of fun. We used to enjoy doing that. We got some folks just saying hello and chatting around in there, which is cool. All righty. Well, uh, the next big thing that we need to get on with here is safety. I need one of those echo machines so that I can go safety. Oh man. And as always, there's a reason why we're talking about safety, and that's because this was a picture of my boot. And you can see I've got this big old wire that punctured the boot, and interesting the way that it's punctured the boot here and here. Now these days I'm wearing these cat safety boots, and they got real good thick tread on them. So this thing didn't even come near to getting to my foot. There's the last on these boots is also reinforced, so my my foot was well protected. I didn't have to worry about getting a puncture wound from the boot from that thing sticking in my foot. But it gets you to thinking about your safety and your safety shoes. Um, a lot of folks, they're out here going, well, let's see now. These are my safety sandals. Yeah, no, that's not a safe. Well, here's my safety, whatever those things are called. Chefs might wear these kind of things in a kitchen. They're actually very specially designed with tread that doesn't slip on the greasy, oily decks of a restaurant. But for scrappers and stuff, yeah, no, those aren't safety. Um, I, like a lot of people, will wear some sort of hiking or running shoe frequently, and I will frequently wear something like this around the shop because it's lighter weight. I'm sweeping my floors all the time. I'm not worried about the stuff getting puncturing into my shoe the way I am when I go to a scrap yard or when I go to a pickup. And then, of course, if it's really rainy or muddy or wet, then you're going to need to wear something for the weather, like these boots. But you can see they've also got some tread. Now, there's some really, when you think about safety associated with your shoes, the key thing to think about is there's actually five things. There's four that you're seeing on here. Uh, so the obvious thing is your puncture wound. So stuff sticking up through the bottom of the boot into your foot. Uh, Roger had a very unfortunate experience with this, as I recall, that put him in the hospital for a few days. So you definitely want to make sure that, especially when you're around scrap yards or if you're picking up at places, you got to be careful with the puncture wounds, the stuff that can get up through the bottom of your boot. Now, even if you had good tough boots, if the tread has worn and the sole has worn down, then stuff can still get up through there. So your puncture wound can be something that you really want to watch for. The smashing wound or stuff falling on your toes is another thing that you need to be worried about. So you want to have steel toe or, I've seen Kevlar composite toes that they say are as tough as steel toes. And, the idea there is that you drop something heavy on your toe. If you're in sneakers or flip-flops, you're going to break your toe, maybe even lose a toe or two. If you have steel toe or reinforced toes, that's going to protect your digits from harm. Now, let's face it, if the object is heavy enough or is falling from far enough away, the steel toe isn't going to help you and could get smashed as well. But that's an entirely different thing. We're talking about your most common kind of foot type injuries that you can experience. Now, this green arrow is actually pointing to a very important aspect of a safety shoe that a lot of people don't think about. The heel has to have a little bit of depth to it so that if you're going up a ladder, you can feel the tread with your heel. That way, if you're not able to look down at your feet to make sure that you've got your foot squarely on the tread, if by having this bit of edge on your heel, you will feel when your foot is on the step of the ladder and you have a secure footing on the ladder. So you want to make sure that you have a good edge on your heel for going up and down the ladders. And then, of course, you want ankle protection. Here is where you have to think about your work environment. Now, if you're going up and down roofs or something like that, you need more flexibility than when you're walking around the scrapyard. If you're carrying heavy stuff, you want that ankle protection because you don't want to twist your ankle which can be extremely painful, which can put you out of operation for a while. So the ankle protection is important. Now, you can get away with just walking around your own shop, provided that you're keeping stuff clean, by having your sneakers on or low cut hiking shoes, runners, as some people call them, because you probably don't need all of that protection in your own shop, but you still need to think about how your shop is laid out and what kind of protection that you're going to need. The last thing that a lot of people don't really think about, but it's the whole idea that you've got this heavy leather boot that is just providing protection against the potential for abrasive wounds, scratches from sharp pieces of scrap, or if you're recovering scrap from a field and there's a lot of brush, sharp objects that can cut up your ankles, your feet. So those are the major things that you're thinking about when you are looking at your shoe, your footwear from a safety perspective. And of course, this is a great way to think about it. Here we are going up the ladder, and if this guy isn't paying very close attention, he could potentially miss a step on this ladder because his heel part is this is kind of borderline. He can probably tell pretty easily, but if that heel gets rounded off too much more, he could slip off, miss that step. And this boot may or may not protect against these nails, because you can see that the tread is pretty worn down here. Some safety shoes will come with a steel or a last. That's the part that's on the bottom of the shoe, or Kevlar or something like that, to give you further protection against the puncture wounds. So of course, nothing beats just paying attention to what's around you for your safety. But these are the things you want to think about with your safety shoes. All right. Well, let's see, what kind of discussion have we had here on our safety shoes. Oh, let's see. I'm looking back here through the comments. Okay, here we are. I think this is the start of these comments. Roger saying that once a week he has to pull 2 or 3 screws out of the bottom of his shoes. Yeah, I hear you, man. And just think if that wasn't there. Dee's comment about those things can be some of the worst, because really you're on your feet. You have to be on your feet scrapping, and if you injure your feet, it can be really bad, really bad. Invest in the safety shoes they can be a little expensive. They don't have to be too expensive, of course, but they can be a bit expensive. So, but man, it's such a worthwhile investment. Just really, really important investment. Yeah. And Ian cuts himself a lot too. So I wouldn't use Ian as an example of the right kind of safety shoes. Yeah, those videos just kill me. I mean, you see these guys with sandals, sometimes they're bare feet. That's just, man, that just kills me when I see that stuff. Richard saying it's amazing how tiny things can feel so big when they're in your shoe. I get stuff stuck in the soles all the time. Doesn't take long to know if it made it all the way through to your foot. Yeah. And you're right. It's like even the smallest little thing can feel huge. When I was in the Navy, I'd be up on deck or something like that. If I got just the tiniest little pieces of something in my boot, it could feel like I had a freaking boulder after a while. So yeah, those they just it's like the amplifier or something. I don't know. Exactly, Andy, like the Princess and the Pea. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, and you absolutely want to keep your tetanus shot up to date, and because that's really important in our biz. We talked about that a few weeks ago, but it's a good reminder because if something does get through your boot and into your body, that tetanus shot will protect you from the harm that can be done to you. Let's see. Yeah, Homer's concerned that if he loses any of his toes, he'll have a problem because he won't be able to count to 20. Oh man, that is hilarious. Oh jeez. Stalker, I did not say hello, so welcome. Great to have you here. Um, yeah. If the nail's big enough and you step on it hard enough, it's going through, right? So, yeah, that one's that's a serious ouchie. All right. Well, real good safety discussion there. Some good back and forth on your safety footwear. So again, I urge everybody, get your safety gear, get your feet protected. All righty. Well, it is time now to get over to our industrial metal, which is steel. Now we're going to look at steel from a couple of different perspectives here. So hang in there with me. This is scrap steel. So what we're looking at here is the 1 year run for scrap steel. I wonder how far back do they go? Yeah, I think that they've just started at Trading Economics putting in scrap steel. So we're only going back a year. Scrap steel fell to 346.5 US dollars a ton on August, down 0.29% from the previous day. Over the past month, scrap steel's price has risen 0.14, but it is still 3.62 lower. When I see these very short discussions that just have numbers but don't give a lot of clarity to where the whys, that tells me that there's some confusion about what's going on. What we saw that scrap steel went up, then it came down. It's slowly been rising, but as we look here in the near term, we're seeing it's kind of rising, kind of steady. We're not quite sure about what's going on. The other interesting thing is that if we go to the candlesticks, what we see is a lot of really tiny signatures. We have some movement here that takes place, but a lot of times in the day there's hardly any movement at all. You can barely see these. That the open and close were so close together. They're essentially unchanged. Now here we see recently we've had some movement up. These green candlesticks tell you that the market opened here and it closed up here. So we have had this upward trend here for scrap steel. Now, I also we need to be really clear here. These are scrap steel futures. These are not what your yard is paying. Plus, they said 3460.5 US dollars per ton with a capital T. It's, you all know this. It is it is it's is it a long ton or a short ton? It gets really confusing. A short ton is 2,000 pounds. A long ton is 2,240 pounds. And I always hate when they just put the T on there because you're never really sure what kind of ton they're referring to. Um, so this could be anywhere from 17 cents a pound to 15 cents a pound, depending upon what kind of ton they're talking about. Um, don't get too wrapped up in the actual dollar value here because the dollar value is going to be so dependent at your yard on what your yard does with the scrap that they're getting. So if your yard is very close to a mill and that mill is making something that they can still sell a lot of, then the prices are going to be higher than a situation similar to what I'm in, where we're up in the mountains of Western North Carolina. Everything has to get shipped somewhere because we don't have any mills very close to us. So, I'm down at 6 cents a pound for shred. So it also, depending upon your yard, they may pay differently for what's called HMS, heavy melt steel, for rotors, for cast. So don't get too wrapped around this actual number here. It's the trend that we want to think about because there's another part of this discussion that we're going to go to. Now, the other thing that I want to do, so this was scrap, and keep this thought back in your mind that it kind of climbed, it dropped, and we're down here in this lower level, but it might be slowly rising. Now, let's pop down here. We're going to go down to HRC steel, and we're still looking at a 1 year time frame. And with the HRC steel, this is hot rolled coil, right? So this steel has been processed into a format that is used by plants. So here we had a lot of motion, a lot of volatility, but it was generally around a plateau level before we had a big spike. And then again, we had a lot. I'm going to make this smaller. That dot's a bit too big. Now, again, we had a lot of volatility going on here, but it was overall a downward trend in the year. So we see that the processed steel numbers saw that spike similar to the scrap steel, and they both sort of seen this somewhat downward trend going on. Now, here's the other thing that you need to think about: where you're located. So here in the United States, with the tariffs that have been put on steel, we see the businesses that use steel are paying more for steel, and they're going to have to pass those prices on to consumers, which could then reduce the amount of demand for steel, which could, have an impact on the prices. Over in Europe, the prices are starting to recover because they're starting to build some more. And so the price movement is going to be a bit different than what we're seeing here in the US. So depending upon what market you're talking and how a person pays attention to that market, you may see the prices rising or falling. It's a little bit questionable. The other thing that I saw when I was researching this is there's actually a lot of divergence in the direction that the quote unquote experts think are going on. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty in the market is what that's telling me. These people that look at these prices and these forecasts for a living, the people that do this for a living, they're going between rising and lowering. All right, so there's a lot of divergence in which way they think that the market is going. And so what that says to me is, people just aren't sure right now. how this is going to play out. So let's talk about what that means to us as scrappers. We're you know we've got our scrap steel. A lot of people depend on steel as like their main thing because it's everywhere. It's really easy to find scrap steel to take to your yard. Just keep taking it in. Just keep moving it in because you got to get the price that you're going to get. Unlike copper or aluminum or brass or any of those kind of things where you might have some assurance of a forecast and therefore try to make some decisions about holding it or selling it. Steel, just sell it. Just sell it. Nobody's really sure what's going to happen. So just keep your steel going in and get the price that you can for it because you're not going to make a whole lot by trying to play this market out. Roger brings a really good point here. Let's see. Let me do this and this. He's referring to a comment that was made earlier. 30 miles might be difficult, especially for shred. When you have prices that are down like this, it's the cost of shipping becomes really, really important. And your yards are dealing with the same thing, right? Because they have to, unless they're right by a mill or very close to a mill, they're shipping that steel somewhere, and those costs can add up. So, you got to really think carefully about that one. If you're an active street scrapper and you're spending a lot of time out on the street, recovering stuff, you might burn more gas than you do finding the steel. Be careful with that. Now, there is something else that I want to point out, and I can do it with the HRC. I couldn't do this with the scrap steel because their chart didn't go out far enough. But let's look at the 10-year. And what you can see in the 10-year chart is, and here, let me get an arrow going here. So, here we are right now, this blue line, and let me put an arrow over that to make it a little clearer. I'll even make that dot a little bit bigger here. So here's where we are right now. Now, a lot of us that have been in this game for a while, we have gone through these dips and we survived, right? These dips. I mean, I remember this period in here, and I remember folks saying, it's not worth scrapping anymore. We can't afford anything. I can't even afford the gas to run my truck. And then we saw this happen. So, having been in this for a while, we're used to this volatility in these prices. It's just a part of the scrap steel game. And so we're just in another one of those phases. What I kind of like about this chart, and when we look at this here, let's slide this over just a little bit. If we look at this portion of the chart, that's relatively stable compared to what we saw over here during the time that a lot of us have been involved in scrapping. Overall, we're not doing that bad. Let's take a look real quick. What do they think is going to happen? The forecast is kind of up. This is sort of a rise here. I mean, it's a rise. It's not a great rise. It's just, they think it's going to keep going up here. We're looking at perhaps 918 in the next 12 months. So, that's good sign for us. It says that the market is at least going to be relatively stable, perhaps climbing. We'll just keep bringing in our shred. Keep moving that shred and we should be fine. So what kind of stuff have you all had going on with your shred as we take a look at your comments on shred? Going back up to where Roger's talking about his foot injury a little bit, answering some question there. Okay, and Roger asked the question about, is that what the mills are paying? So I think we got your answer. I think we answered that one, Roger. I think we're good to go there. His yard's been at 140 a ton for almost a year now. Yeah, I mean my yard's been at 6 cents a pound. It hasn't changed at all. So David's at 135 a ton. Richard is saying that shred has dropped, so it's hardly worth taking in. I save it. I don't want to toss it in the trash. At 5 cents a pound, I spend more on gas than Yeah, 5 cents a pound. Um, I for me, I mean, I'm getting 6 cents a pound. It's just a tiny little bit better. Um, for me, I have no choice, right? When I scrap out PCs and I end up with all these shells, well, if I don't get the stuff out of the shark cage, I'm not going to have any room. So once a week, once every other week, I'm taking empty shells in. And the view that I take is, hey, I'm getting 6 cents a pound for my trash. Andy says they've been at 9.5 pence a kg at his yard for months now. Okay. Um, Roger is asking the question, how far is your yard, Richard? His is only 5 miles away from. Oh, you got 2 yards within 5 miles, man. That's awesome. Yeah, my yard isn't that far from me either. So it's the yard where I get where the bulk of my computers from. So for me, it's like I'm taking my trash to them. They're paying me for the trash. When I say trash, I'm talking about the empty shells. So they pay me for those, and then I pull the truck around and they load up my truck with a pallet of PCs or a pallet of boards or something like that. So it's a little bit different dynamic that I'm dealing with. Uh, David saying, I feel like a commodities investor watching this, but in reality, we're all waiting for our neighbors to remodel their bathrooms. Oh, man. I love the sense of humor that we have here. It is so awesome, man. Oh. And Richard's saying that his yard's about 10 miles away. They don't buy green boards and pay less than the yard I go to that's about 30 miles away. And that's what led to Roger's comment about 30 miles might be a little bit of a stretch. Yeah. And he's hanging on to his steel until the prices rise. Okay. You might be holding it for a while, but it's going to be a slow rise, so you should be okay. Let's see. We had some more comments here. And Richard was saying shred was around 12 cents a pound for a long time. Even then, it's just cash flow. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to get rich on shred. It's just. And let's see. Mike is still getting 180 a ton there. And all right, let's see. What's Richard saying here? I don't get it. I tell my wife to load it. I give her the money. I turn in my copper and such. I'm not quite sure I'm following where you're going there, unless what you're saying is that you're just giving all the money you get to your wife, which, that's what guys do. So, deal with it. Uh, all right. So, yeah, again, steel. There's a lot of unknown with the steel market right now. We're not sure which way it's going. Just keep selling your steel. You know, if you know, it's going to go up slowly. So if you want, you can hang on to it. But steel can take up a lot of space depending upon what kind of steel you got. So, maybe the thing to do is to just go ahead and get it sold off. One of the things that is really cool that I do want to bring your attention to, if you're over here in the U.S., is BoardSword is now paying $37 a pound for gold ram. So, your gold fingered ram, $37 a pound. That's freaking huge. So, if you're here in the U.S. and you've been hanging on to some ram, you might want to go ahead and get that. Go ahead and get that sold off to BoardSword because that's a really good price. Now, this also brings to mind the question of what Salvager up to and why haven't we seen a link yet? So you'll all will recall that last week we ran a little competition to name the shark that we adopted, and Salvager won a good margin on that win. So I submitted the name over to the Shark Research Foundation, and they applied the name to the tag. Unfortunately, Salvager hasn't cooperated yet. She hasn't come to the surface, or when she has come to the surface, the satellites weren't in position to pick up the tag. So we're kind of hanging on here, waiting for Salvager to cooperate a little bit and at least break the surface enough for the satellites to pick up the tag. When it happens, the Research Foundation will make sure that I know that they've gotten some hits on her, and we can see what's going on. So hang in there. As soon as Salvager cooperates and breaks the surface enough for us to get an eyeball on her, we'll let you know what she's been up to. But it's really exciting to know that we have helped with shark research. That we're watching out for this 12-foot great white, and when she starts swimming around near the surface, we'll be able to see what she's doing, what she's up to. So very, very cool. And again, I thank everybody that has that was a part of that. Moving forward, we have we're going to get really. I'm going to get really active again in moving forward now that we are linked back up with a good shark research organization like the Shark Research Foundation. Instead of my Patreon, which I am going to officially cancel, somebody is still putting some money into the Patreon account because there's still a little bit of money trickling in there. I'm going to get ready to terminate the Patreon account, but I have initiated a YouTube membership account. Same tiers, about the same, levels. So if you want to be a part of future naming efforts and such, check out the Shark Scrapper YouTube membership. In addition to being part of the naming and voting on the name and stuff like that, there's other perks that are available through that membership program. So next time you're over on YouTube, take a look at the Shark Scrapper membership and join up. I've also designed some really cute little things that will pop up on your name when you leave comments and stuff, so people know that you are a member of the Shiver. By the way, Shiver, that's a collection of sharks. So if you join the membership program, you're part of the Shiver. So that's going to be fun there. All right, now I want to go over to a question that I get every now and then from some folks. So we're going to go over here and we're going to look at the gold to silver ratio. I've had some questions. I get these questions every now from folks. What is this gold to silver ratio, and how can I use it? Well, in the simplest explanation, it's how many ounces of silver is it going to take to buy an ounce of gold. So that's the easiest thing. Now, this used to be a really controlled number, but as governments moved away from gold-backed currency, then this has fluctuated. This fluctuates a lot now, based on the movement of gold and silver prices. Now, how can you use this to your advantage? So here's the theory, and I'm using a real gold to silver ratio right now. But here's the theory of how you would use this. So up here, when gold was over $100, when the gold to silver ratio was over 100, so it was 103. The theory is that you could take an ounce of gold and get, in this case, 103 ounces of silver. Now, as the gold to silver ratio drops, that means that you now, once we get down here to this 86 level, you could take the 100 ounces of silver that you got up here and now take 86 of those ounces of silver and buy an ounce of gold and still have some silver left over. So in theory, as your gold to silver ratio drops, you could trade in some of your silver to get an ounce of gold, in the intention that the gold to silver ratio would again climb back up here to that 100 level, where you would then trade that ounce of gold for 100 ounces of silver and rinse and repeat this process. Now, it begs the question, how frequently does that go on? Well, if we look at the 5-year chart, you can see a lot of volatility going on here in the gold to silver ratio. If we look at just the times that it was at 100 or more, well, that doesn't happen a lot. But if you were paying attention to this and you wanted to play this, then what you could do is you could buy some gold. Take some of your gold and turn it into silver on these peaks. And then when it hits these lows, turn that silver back into gold. There are people that's all they do, is they're doing this gold to silver ratio thing. And they have developed their own models that say, when it's at this level, I turn my gold into silver. And when it drops down to this level, I turn my silver back into gold. And they're trying to play those numbers. Now, of course, you got to be really careful with this, and you've got to be paying attention to that market regularly. And you have to have pretty good control of your premiums when you do this, because those premiums can eat you alive if you're not paying, if you don't have a good way to do that. So it's, that's the gold to silver ratio. That's how people use it. I'm not promoting this per se, for trading, unless you really want to get into it and you've got the wherewithal to do it, because you could easily get clobbered with this. Just like in the stock market, there's a lot of risk to this, And I urge you to do a lot of research before you try to get into this trading based on the gold to silver ratio. Um, but hey, there's a lot of people that do that, and it's a way to take advantage of gold and silver to help you. And if you look at the overall trend here, so going back to uh, January of 2021, overall we've had a trend upwards in the gold to silver ratio, but we've also had enough volatility. And if I get smaller dots, and we might be able to see this, but we've also had enough volatility in here that you could take advantage of some of those swings. Right here, you look at this swing down, and then you get your silver, and then it goes up, and you get your gold into silver, and it's coming back down. So there's room there that you could do that trading, but you want to be really, really careful if you're going to do that. So let's quickly go over and see if there are any questions about gold to silver ratio, and see if anybody had anything. Now we're talking about, there's some conversation going on about RAM, of course, because I brought up the price of RAM. Okay, so we don't really have, we're, we didn't get a whole lot of conversation going on the gold to silver ratio, but we did have some conversation going on the RAM. And Homer's was saying that he noticed that older RAM sometimes uses silver fingers. How come they don't still use silver if it used to work? Because gold is better. Gold is just a better conductor than silver, and so the manufacturers decided that they would go to gold. That's why you're only going to find tin silver fingered RAM in the older modules. All the newer RAM is gold, and what you'll find too is that the newer the RAM, the less gold that's in the gold fingers, because they've been able to figure out ways to get to use thinner and thinner and thinner gold ENIG, from going from gold plating to gold ENIG, very thin, but they still get the connectivity that they need. So it's because gold is better than silver, and so that's why they shifted to gold. Folks that recover and refine their own gold, they really like RAM, as Richard Holbert has been attesting to. That's been a good move. And if you look at the buyers of RAM, they have a different price for the tin silver fingered RAM than they do for the gold fingered RAM. But it's a really good question, Homer. Really good question there. Let's see what else we got going. Gold ENIG. So ENIG is electronickel-less covering. I forget the exact definition of ENIG again, real quick, but it's whereas gold plating tends to be kind of thick. ENIG is very thin, maybe even like 3 to 5 microns thick, where gold is much thicker. Gold plating is much thicker. So when you see on a board the really kind of shiny, especially on the newer electronics, and you see the shiny gold stuff, that's ENIG as opposed to plating. Gold plating tends to be a duller gold color, and it's going to be thicker. That's why a lot of your older electronic boards are more valuable than the newer boards. And ENIG is the new process that allows manufacturers to take advantage of the qualities of gold to offer very good connectivity and connections, but not have to use nearly as much gold. It not here. I'm gonna. It's kind of a squishy answer because you'll hear people use the term flashing, um, and they'll sometimes use it interchangeably with ENIG. Um, but the best terms to that the ones that I always try to stick with is plating versus ENIG. And I guess you would say flashing is probably somewhere in the middle there. But you know what? Let's do this. Let's do this. Since we're here, and you know what? I tell you what. Let's do this, Andy. We are we are at time when we need to head over to Ireland. So on our way over to Ireland, I'm going to get the textbook definition of flashing versus ENIG, and we'll talk about it over in Ireland. If you have autoplay enabled, when I end this stream, you're going to be automatically redirected across the pond to Ireland. If you don't, then please go to the YouTube, type in Scrapping Irish, join us over on the live stream. Andy, I will have the answer for you when we get over to Ireland. I will see you all over there.